Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss American Beauty, starring Kevin Spacey, Annette Bening, Thora Birch, Wes Bentley, Mina Savari, Peter Gallagher, Allison Janney, and Chris Cooper, directed by Sam Mendes. Now, I'm doing this for his new movie coming out, Empire of Light, which actually looks pretty good, but will it be the masterpiece that a couple of the films I've reviewed have? Yes, I reviewed Skyfall, Spectre for the James Bond series, and 1917 for the 2020 Oscar bait. So I must get into this one before I get into this review. I have not seen this movie in theaters because I was pretty young at the time, number one. And number two, I saw this when I was in college. And what got me to watch it? Well, I hear it's a good movie. And is it as good as I thought it would be? Let's get into it. We open with Jane Burnham, played by Thora Birch, confessing she wants her father dead to a man she'll meet later in the film. And we get a narration from her 42-year-old father, Lester Burnham, played by Kevin Spacey, as he jerks off in the shower, while he meets with his wife, Carolyn, or we meet his wife Carolyn, played by Annette Bening, as we see they have a marriage falling apart, as both Carolyn and Jane thinks he's a giant loser, as he works at an office job with a boss named Brad as for 14 years, as it looks humiliating, and the way this movie is shot is very well done. And I like the cinematography as I get the impression Lester and Carolyn's marriage is really falling apart, and Brad feels like a jackass. The writing of this dialogue is kind of sentimental, in my opinion. We get a creeper that just moved in next door named Ricky Fitz, played by Wes Bentley, as well as Barbara and Colonel Fitz, played by Allison Janney and Chris Cooper, respectively. As the Colonel feels like an asshole to Ricky, and he's very strict on him, and I feel it, while Carolyn is not a very good at her job, which is selling houses, as she tries to sell a house but doesn't. Well, we get some rude versus people who are afraid of buying the house because of the way Carolyn sells it. And we get a brief scene of John Cho, who before he was ever famous, from American Pie. And it's funny because another actor that is in American Pie is also in this movie. Jane is embarrassed enough as it is for her parents to show up for her marching practice while Lester stares at Jane's friend, Angela Hayes, played by the other actress, or actor I should say, from American Pie, Mina Savari. And she is attractive, sure, I'll buy it, but Lester stares at Angela and chats with her like he's flirting with her, and I'm not a fan of older men getting to younger women while they're married, which seems fucking disturbing in so many levels. While he imagines her in a bed filled with roses, and Angela gets stared at since she was 12 years old, and I thought, ew, an older man going out with a 12-year-old is illegal. While Jane gets dropped off and gets stared at by Ricky with his video camera like a creep he is, and this movie is doing things that disgusts me, as it can be disgusting at times. Lester calls Angela and she calls back and thinks her dad is gross. Well, not by her. By she. I'm talking about Angela calling back and Jane thinking her father is gross. And this movie is fucking weird in so many levels that I don't wish any of the shit I think is happening going down, as it is melodramatic, and it feels rotten all over the place. Ricky goes to the same school as Jane and Angela, and as Angela is the popular girl in high school, and Jane isn't, as she sees Ricky coming towards them and doesn't look at Angela once while he thinks Jane is interesting, but which is sweet, but what is an awkward scene, as half the movie is fucking awkward, and I hate to say it, but the dialogue falls flat in my opinion, and honestly, I don't care for these characters all that much, unfortunately. Lester and Carolyn go to a party with her boss, Buddy Kane, played by Peter Gallagher. And as Carolyn approaches Buddy, Lester kisses Carolyn like they have a healthy relationship, which is what he said, and gets a drink and meets as well as smokes pot with Ricky, as was waitressing and while smoking pot, as Ricky quits his job while Carolyn flirts with Buddy and gets a date as she goes up to Lester and meets Ricky as she was demanding in that scene. And that scene did make me laugh as Ricky offers him more pot, which is hilarious because he was there with his wife, not Ricky. As they get home, Lester is approached by Angela and dreams about her kissing him in front of Jane, and again, awkward. Jane lets Carolyn know Angela is sleeping over while Angela is in love with Lester and Ricky spying on them, and Lester overhearing Angela saying he would be hot if he worked out as he goes to the garage and starts working out, which is creepy in general. Lester dreams of Angela in the bathtub filled with roses while he's jerking off in the bed. And Carolyn hears it, and they talk about how it hasn't been a marriage for years, and he's a changed man. And that scene was painful to watch, just painful. Lester asks Ricky to get more pot discussing the movie Reanimator, which I have seen once in my life, and gets more pot and decides he wants to flip burgers again like he did back in 1973. And next thing you know, Lester works out and smokes pot while Carolyn doesn't approve, and Lester gets fired from the job he worked at as he tries to bribe Brad and gets a job at a burger joint next thing you know. And the problem I'm having is the acting is fine, not great, as Kevin Spacey is fine, but he's doing not his best work when it comes to becoming a divorced parent. While Lester gets a job at the burger joint, Jane falls for Ricky, while Angela is being bitchy, and Carolyn fucks Buddy, and Ricky shows the Colonel has a Nazi plate hidden in his office, as well as his other projects as he filmed in the past. And the movie fell apart a while ago, but it's hitting me to the point it's making me uncomfortable, and the dialogue is falling quite flat, I should say. Lester tells Carolyn and Jane about how he quits his job and he feels great about it during dinner, as he hated the job he worked at anyways, and throws a plate of asparagus at the wall and changes to turn off the music during dinner time. And Carolyn asks, all melodramatic, and slaps Jane while in her bedroom and doesn't apologize for it by the end of the movie, which is upsetting enough as the movie is very upsetting. Jane takes off her clothes while Ricky watches with the video camera and until his father, aka the Colonel, beats the shit out of him by going in his office and teaches him about discipline. And that's a hell of a way to talk to your kid and treat about discipline, as the scene is just terrible. Carolyn fires a gun and buys it as well, while Lester acts like a kid and buys a car of his own without consulting with his wife, while Carolyn is looking great and Lester wants to make out with her, but she doesn't want to ruin her couch, which is bullshit in so many levels, because hell, I lay on my couch, not to whack off, but I lay on my couch all the time as Jane is with Ricky, and he tells Jane more about himself while naked, while she hates her dad and wants him dead, which is a fucked up way to tell everyone's story. Lester's last day is the next scene as he jogs and yells at Jane about being a bitch like Carolyn after telling them she's going to bring Angela to the house as they can grow more apart. And the Colonel thinks Ricky is gay and searches around his bedroom for a tape he recorded where Lester worked out, and Carolyn and Buddy drive through Lester's workplace, embarrassing Carolyn, as Carolyn and Buddy go to a motel and they split, and these are just so goddamn painful to watch, as it's, like I said before, and I'm going to say it again, so fucking sentimental. Lester contacts Ricky on a beeper, which made me feel old about pot, while Jane and Angela are on the way home, and the Colonel sees Ricky with Lester and thinks he's gay, which must be awkward in a serious way, and Jane and Angela are home and Angela flirts with Lester, as he's been working out, and the Colonel beats up Ricky again as he confesses what he wants to hear, which is he's a gay man, and throws him out of the house and says he never wants to see him again, which is not a correct way to a parent should act with their kids. And Ricky leaves, and this feels bad enough as it is. And this movie I wasn't comfortable watching while Angela and Jane become unfriendly to one another, as Ricky wants to leave with Jane, and she leaves while the Colonel comes to Lester's garage and talks with him as Lester knows he's getting a divorce. And the Colonel kisses Lester out of the blue, and I'm thinking, what the fuck was that all about? I don't know, and I don't care. Carolyn comes to the house to kill Lester while Lester sees Angela in the living room briefly made love in an uncomforting way as she confesses it's her first time and he covers her up and he doesn't want to have intercourse with her as they eat and talk with each other as she uses the restroom while Jane and Ricky lie next to each other and we off screen get the death of Lester as Jane and Ricky see how he's now dead, as Angela hears it and Carolyn appears it as she comes in, and it turns out the Colonel shot Lester in the head, and this climax is so fucking in a sentimental way. Now I gotta ask a question before I get to the rating: is this movie worth the Oscar Best Picture? No. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.9 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, the movie was well made, but does it deserve the Best Picture Oscar from 1999? No, because it doesn't. And that's because I don't care for these characters, as the acting is fine at best, despite I don't really care for the characters. The dialogue falls flat for me, as the writing is, and this is overly sentimental to the point it got rotten at times. And the writing is pretty flat, as it has a bunch of awkward moments in it. The movie left a sour taste in my mouth, as Kevin Spacey and Annette Bening's marriage was falling flat for me. So, unfortunately, in my opinion, it's a non recommendation because it was something I wasn't comfortable talking about, as I wanted to be better than it would turn out to be. But honestly, I had a hard time getting through this movie. I'm not even going to lie to you. I really did. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Jarhead. And I almost forgot, I did do Road to Perdition. So yeah, I already did that. I forgot to bring that up, but I will be back next time with Jarhead. And until then, it's time for the American Beauty to rise.